Welcome back to the 8-Bit Guy. So we start off this episode with a road trip. I got a call from a guy in Oklahoma City that runs an electronics recycling shop there, and he picked up some things that should be quite interesting and worth the trip. The drive from Fort Worth to Oklahoma City is 221 miles, or a little over 3 hours each direction. Usually, I like to point out some interesting sights along the way on road trips, but in this case, there isn't a huge amount to see in this area. There is a giant wind farm along the way that you can see for miles away. Another interesting thing is the multiple casinos along the way, including the WinStar World Casino and Resort, which is the largest casino in the world. Believe it or not, gambling is actually illegal in Oklahoma, but these casinos are located on Native American reservations, which have their own legal autonomy. Now, for the Futurama fans out there, if you've seen the episode where they all go to Mars Vegas, that episode is very much a parody of this.
I can't help noticing a lot of your employees are native Martians.
So hopefully this helps to explain that, especially to my European viewers. After about 3 hours, I finally make it to Oklahoma City, but my final destination's actually on the other side of town. And here we are at Oklahoma Electronics Recycling. Jeremiah starts by opening the back of his truck and showing me some of the recent pickups he's made.
Lots and lots of kit boards. Most of these are synthesizer related. We have found some for like the Kim 1. I think that's a voice, yeah, it's a voice card.
There were certainly some interesting things in here. For example, I think that is a keyboard for an Apple II of some kind. And then there was this mystery keyboard. I just have no idea what that would have been used in. And there was also a slim camcorder. Doesn't seem very slim by today's standards. I also found this Wise keyboard. I thought it was for a terminal, but I didn't see the terminal anywhere. Of course, I wasn't there to see any of this. The best stuff was already inside, but first he had to show me his doorbell.
So we needed a doorbell. We have parts. We didn't have a doorbell at the time. So it's a septic tank alarm for the overflows, a relay, and a mouse.
Both buttons?
Yeah. They're just wired common together.
Inside the building was, of course, as to be expected. Most of this was certainly scrap, but there were a few gems here and there. Oh look, we found the Wise that goes with that Wise keyboard we saw in the back of the truck. That's a Wise PC. I've never seen one of these. Oh wow, those are some big old heavy hard drives. It's got an old MFM Seagate 225 in it. It's actually hard for me to believe that it's been long enough to find things like these old MacBooks and iBooks are now considered, scrap. Wasn't too long ago I was restoring these and refurbishing them and selling them, and I guess that was like 10 years ago, I guess, at this point. On this shelf, Jeremiah stores some of his more interesting recent finds.
There we go. Gotta love the 8-inch. 300K about with the format they were using from the OSI. And the best feature of all, actual manual rate protection.
Of course, the best was yet to come.
So, from the description of this system, from the gal who was actually at the company at the time, they were looking at a system to be able to read audio cues as well as write them on reel-to-reel recorders. So they actually had one of the big old reel-to-reels through, I guess, I believe it's an industry standard connection for recording studios. And there's actually a dongle that would plug into the back.
Wow, so these are, yeah, you can tell this has been sitting for quite some time.
Yeah, and it didn't have the lid open or closed, so it's picked up quite a bit of dust.
And
that was after hitting with the air compressor.
Looks like you got quite a few of these.
These guys were pretty much packed and ready to go, minus the actual interface kit. Looks like they just reused Commodore's end caps there.
Synchronous Technologies.
I have not found an original box for them.
Wow, there's even more of them.
I think there's about 12, plus some parts units.
Oh, look at that. A whole bunch of VIC-20s.
Yep, in various states of
repair. Well, in various states of yellowing, too. Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if it's like...
And you can tell which side was facing up, because You get the oxygen fade.
Yeah.
That one doesn't have the.
Yeah, there's no
facial
labels.
plate.
No labels on these.
I think they painted the keys. They feel like
Yeah, I
they
was
have,
looking
like,
at
a
that,
lacquer or something
and I
over
was like, well, these can't be original Commodore keys because the color, but yeah, they could be technically painted, I guess. That's
Yeah,
okay.
you can see the paint on the
Yeah,
underside.
yeah.
So they probably just set them all
They
out
just-
and just rattle canned them.
We got more VIC 20s, VIC 20 motherboards, box full of them here. But
I'm sure you've gotten plenty of familiarity with those.
yeah, I know a lot about VIC 20 motherboards. Now this,
That is mostly hand. I don't know what the story is on that guy.
I don't know if that has anything to do with the
It
VIC
was
20.
actually packaged-
So I heard you had some other really rare Commodore equipment.
But yes, I have some very rare what became Commodore equipment.
And this was found in the same pile with all the VIC 20s and stuff?
Yes, it's from the same company.
Wow. That's quite a find. So what we have here, of course, is a Chem 1, and possibly a very early model. For those that don't know, this is like the Apple I of Commodore systems. It predates the PET, and it's certainly not the kind of thing you'd expect to find in a recycle shop. Anyway, we had a look at some of the other neat systems he had found, such as this Hazeltine system. And we found some old Mouser electronics bags, which was quite the throwback for me because these are the exact bags they were using when I worked at Mouser in the mid-1990s. And of course, now it was time to load all this stuff up in my car, and honestly, I wasn't even sure if it was all going to fit. I definitely have to fold my back seats down. I was also constantly asking myself, where in the world was I going to put all of this when I got it home? Anyway, we did manage to fit it all in the car, and I headed back on the long trip back to Texas. It was dusk at this point, and while it might seem like it would be a pleasant trip home, I actually thought I'd have to commit myself to an insane asylum after listening to the squeaky styrofoam all the way home. And imagine listening to this for 3.5 hours. So now that I'm back home, let's have a look at one of these VIC 20s. When I pull the styrofoam off, you can see this huge contrast of color, which is most likely just dirt and dust. Now, looking a bit closer, I have a bad feeling there might also be some yellowing going on. But this was one of the units on top, so maybe the ones underneath wouldn't be as bad. Obviously, what I needed to do was try cleaning the thing off, so here goes. As you can see, just a good 5-minute cleaning job made a dramatic difference. But unfortunately, there is some yellowing on the plastic in the center. So at this point, you may find yourself asking, David, what the heck is this thing? What is this monstrosity that somebody made? And I think there's something that I need to explain first. If you go back to the early 80s, like 1981 to like 1985, there was no Raspberry Pi, there was no Arduino, right? So if you were building some kind of industrial control system or something that required a computer to interface with it, the cheapest thing you could get was going to be a VIC 20. I mean, technically you could get like a ZX81 or Timex Sinclair 1000 for cheaper, but the membrane keyboard on that made it very unsuitable for those types of applications. So the VIC 20 was often the choice of the day for what someone today might use an Arduino for. And so, I did that episode a while back restoring that old oily, nasty VIC 20, and I had speculated in that video that computer was probably used in some sort of industrial environment to control some sort of, milling equipment or something like that. And that was actually really common. I mean, the VIC 20 was way cheaper than an Apple II, and even after the Commodore 64 came out, it was still like half or even sometimes a quarter of the price of the Commodore 64. And if you didn't need like all the graphics and sprites and the SID chip and all that kind of stuff, if you were just using it to control something, the VIC 20 was a much more logical choice. And so that's exactly what we have here. This is actually not the first time I've seen one of these. I've actually seen them in photographs before because they've been brought up and discussed on Facebook a few times. And there's some magazine articles that you can look at, and I'll post some pictures of them here. And you can see that this was used as some sort of control interface for an audio editing system. That's the best I can make out. So in fact, I saw one person make a comparison and say that this was like if you're familiar with the video toaster for the Amiga and how that revolutionized video editing, well, this was kind of the audio equivalent of that came out a few years earlier, and they used, of course, the VIC 20 for it. Now, I'm actually really interested to power one of these things on because I don't know whether it's going to have any custom ROMs in it or whether that was all handled through the cartridge interface, which we can't seem to find any of that left over. So for those wondering, by the way, Jeremiah actually picked these up from an abandoned building there in Oklahoma City that actually used to be the headquarters for where this product was actually manufactured. So that's why there were so many of them there. Okay, time to plug this thing in and see what happens. These didn't come with power supplies, so I'll just use my trusty Nubrick. These particular VIC-20s use the same power supply as the C64. The earlier models were different, but these are all the later models. And here we go. It appears to boot up just like a regular VIC-20. I guess there are no custom ROMs inside. Okay, well, let's try the keyboard. As I suspected, these keys do exactly what they always did. They simply removed a lot of keys, but the ones that remain are unchanged. Well, let's open it up and see if there's anything different inside. I don't think so. I'm surprised how clean it is inside. This looks like a brand new VIC-20. I mean, there's a hint of dust on the motherboard, but that's it. Also, as far as I can see, everything on this board is stock. There are no modifications. Keyboard, of course, is a different story. I can see they probably pulled this tape off at one point and didn't put it back on very well. Oh, and look at this. They completely cut the shift lock key out of the board. I don't even think they bothered to desolder it. Okay, well, I put it back together and I wanted to see if I could play some games on it. I tried Cheese and Onion first. Most of the good games for the VIC-20 came on cartridge, and typically those didn't require much of any keyboard input, so I think this shouldn't be a problem. I'll just plug in the joystick here. And as expected, it actually works just fine. Ironically, I would show the game I'm working on right now for the VIC-20, but I can't, because it requires me to type the load command on the keyboard, and there's just no way to do it. So I tried a few more games, such as Avenger. Now this one actually requires that you press F1 to start the game, which is no problem since that's one of the keys that are still left on the keyboard. So yeah, no problem there. Same thing with Donkey Kong. It actually uses 3 of the function keys, but again, no problem. Pole position works fine. Tetris works fine. And I tried one more, Pentagorat. So yeah, I'd say that virtually all the cartridge games will still work fine on one of these despite the missing keys. So let's take a look at this stuff in my garage floor. As you can see, quite a few filthy VIC-20s, a box of scrap VIC-20s, and of course this stray Atari 2600 that somehow wound up in the box too. Looking over here, there's a box of cassettes. These are kind of interesting as they have this little locking mechanism to keep the tape from moving. This one says drum sys and seems to have what might be some memory addresses in hexadecimal. Now this is something. I've never seen one of these before, but I recognized it right away. Now, I'll explain that here shortly. Needless to say, this is an EEPROM programmer that fits in the Commodore user port and was most likely used to write the EEPROMs for their cartridges. I also found this, which appears to be a user port peripheral too, but seems to have some audio and MIDI interfaces on board. And I was wrong. It looks like there are at least a few power supplies in here. I'm not sure I'd want to risk using them though. Digging a little deeper, I found an older style VIC-20 power supply. This is the 2-prong style, and as it turns out, a few of these VIC-20s are indeed the older board type that have the 2-prong power adapter. There were also a couple of RF modulators, both the old style, which is just a black box, and the new style, which is smaller and says Commodore on it. Fortunately, most people today would not need these since composite video is everywhere. And there were a few of these in here. This is apparently a metal top piece to some of their hardware, but that seems to be all I can find of it. Here we have an almost complete VIC-20 keyboard, except for the shift lock key, which has already been removed. And in the bottom of the box are these strange boards. I'm not sure what these are. They are hand-wired, but have a lot of what appear to be MIDI and audio ports on them, plus a few bare VIC-20 motherboards. Let's see if we can clean up this EEPROM programmer. Yeah, it seems to clean up pretty easily. So, I told you that I'd never seen one of these, but recognized it right away, and you might ask, why? Well, you see, when I was about 11 or 12 years old, I got this book with my Commodore 128. And I took this book to school and read through every page. What? You didn't know I was a big-time nerd? Anyway, so this book shows all the official Commodore products of the era, but also shows a number of third-party products. And right here on one of the first pages, you'll see this. And I used to read about this, even though I didn't fully understand what it was supposed to actually do. But anyway, here it is. And I never thought I'd see one in person. So, moving along, I wanted to find out if these bare VIC-20 boards work or not. All I need is video and power to get a pretty good idea, and here goes nothing. Well, I think we can safely assume that one doesn't work. So, I thought I'd test the second board, and I noticed an empty socket here where the CPU goes. So, no problem, I have a spare working CPU, so I'll stick that in there, and this one's dead as a doornail. However, I feel kind of dumb now. After looking the board over for potential problems, I noticed that there's no friggin' RAM chips in the board. I would have noticed an empty socket, but I guess my brain wasn't looking for missing chips. And the other one was also missing RAM as well. Okay, well, I just happen to have some extra VIC-20 RAM chips laying around, and I also have a few sockets, so I thought, hey, what the heck? It'll only take 5 minutes to see if these boards work. I was curious if these were scrap boards from defective units, or if they were actually experimenting with them, for example, to add extra RAM or something like that. So, depending on whether the board works once I add RAM chips, will help answer that question. And looky there, it works. The screen's a bit dark, but this is a common issue I've seen working on VIC-20s. It just needs a little adjustment. If you remove the metal cover over the video chip, there's a little potentiometer in there you can adjust, and as you can see, you can go really dark or super bright, but I think this setting here is just about perfect. So the question is, why did they remove the RAM chips? Makes me wonder. Moving along, we need to talk about this Chem 1. Now this is a very rare and valuable piece of computing history. The trouble is, I know next to nothing about it other than historical facts. I have no idea how to use it or even test it. And looking at this old power supply that came with it, I wouldn't dare even consider plugging this thing into power. I mean, just look at that. Ew. I do think this slot here was added onto the board. This is not standard equipment. As you can see, it's soldered to a whole bunch of places at the bottom of the board. I suspect this was used for a video card. Keep in mind, the Chem 1 was never meant to connect to a display. Unfortunately, no video card was found with the board. And so this raises a lot of questions about what the heck to do with this thing. The board itself is really dirty and grungy, and I can probably clean that up, but what to do with the rest of it? So there's several considerations to think about with this Chem 1. First of all, the question of, does it work? And then I have to counter that question with, does it matter? I mean, because nobody's going to sit around and play with a Chem 1 in the same regard that nobody's going to sit around and play with an Apple 1. Now, I mean, if you really wanted to play with a Chem 1 that badly, there are some replica boards which would make far more sense than playing around with an original one. So, you know, for example, I don't know that I would want to desolder the CPU or some of these ceramic chips and replace them with modern ones just to fix it and make it work. I think it probably looks better just keeping it the way that it is. Obviously, I do want to clean it up, and I'm investigating what the best way would be to do that. But here's the other thing. What to do about this power supply and this ugly green rotted piece of wood that it's attached to? Those are not original. I mean, they didn't come with the board. That was something the user added. Same with this video socket or whatever this expansion socket is that they added here. So, should I get rid of those and mount this board in something else, like some kind of glass display case or something like that? I just don't know. These are things that I'll need to think about. I'll probably have to follow this up with another video at some point. Anyway, I welcome any suggestions on what the best thing to do with this. Oh, and by the way, I don't actually even plan on keeping this. It's not well known, but I think there's a new computer museum that's going to be opening up in Austin here maybe next year. And my plan is to donate this to them. That way it'll be on display for people to see. So what will happen to the VIC-20s? Well, I've picked out the 3 best ones, and I plan to donate one to the Home Computer Museum in the Netherlands, another one to Bo Zimmerman's collection, and the third one will go with the Chem 1 to Austin. So that's the plan anyway. I'm donating the rest of them to my friend Chris Haslage, who also came over and helped me clean and test the rest of them. He works for an organization called One Up on Cancer, which is a nonprofit for helping cancer patients based here in Dallas and has a video game theme to everything they do. They're going to finish cleaning and testing these and will be auctioning them off. So if you're interested in getting one of these, I'll put a link in the description field explaining where to keep an eye out for these.